morning, everyone. I'm so glad to welcome Louise Mosley, who is the founder of NB Coaching. She's got 20 years of experience in sales and marketing. Having been through her own journey from corporate to Caribbean to coaching, and she supports other businesses, the owners, to go through some self-exploration trip, should I say, and find their own flow and the flow of their business to grow individually as well as the businesses. From working in pharmaceutical sales to manage hotel reservations and so on and so forth, she's got 20 plus years of experience. And she's with us. I'm so delighted. She's going to give us a completely different perspective to life and growth. So without taking much of your time, let me give it back to Louise. So Louise, what's the topic today?
Well, firstly, thank you so much for inviting me. And this is one of the topics that is very close to my heart. So the topic today we're going to look at is what is flow and why does it matter? As I say, it's something that maybe people have heard of before, maybe they've not, but it's certainly something that I talk to my clients a lot and I post about in social media. And it also has a connection to water. So being a very passionate scuba diver and lover of the underwater world, it kind of fits with that too. So I'm really pleased to talk about it today.
Fantastic. So yeah, I heard about the flow a little bit and we spoke before. So, I think flow is so essential for a wealthier and a happier life. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a balance of both. And just, from the audience, if you could tell us, what is this flow, first of all, and why does it matter?
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, there's lots of different definitions of flow, and one I wanted to share with you, I just popped it on the screen actually, on a slide. So it's by Stephen Kotler, and if you could just bring that up, it would be great so people can see that too. And I think this really describes flow so well. So Stephen Kotler describes flow as an optimum state of consciousness. It's where we feel our best, it's where we perform our best. And the term also takes the name from the sensation it confers. It is that feeling of going with the flow. And when we're in that state, we're so focused on the task in hand that everything else falls away. Actions and awareness merge, a sense of self vanishes, and our and our sense of time distorts. And basically our performance goes through the roof. So that's a definition of flow by Stephen Kotler. And we've all got our own definitions. And I think once you experience flow for yourself, then you can maybe put those words into your own language and define what it really means to you. So I think in terms of flow, like I say, it's important to think about when we're in flow. And that's a great definition, but sometimes it's also easier to think about it on the flip side. So what does it mean to be out of flow? What does that feel like? So if you're experiencing feelings of anxiety or overwhelm, or maybe you're feeling a little bored or disinterested, then maybe you're out of flow too. Because some people think of flow as always being about doing what comes naturally. And whilst that is true, when something becomes too easy, and I think we've all experienced that when we've really cracked something, there's no challenge there for us, and we can easily become bored and quite easily distracted. So there's different elements to being out of flow. Sometimes it's when things are too hard and we lack the experience and we get a lot of anxiety, but equally we can be out of flow when we've got no challenge.
Right. So yeah, I think there's a difference between something so easy to do and something so naturally to do. So if something comes natural to me, it's not necessarily easy. So what it means is it's something that I enjoy doing, I'm passionate about, or I find that's my passion, but it's not necessarily easy. So that means, it could still be challenging. So will that be the right way to look at flow? It's natural, but not necessarily easy.
Exactly. So yeah, it can be easy, but it can also have that challenge. And I just could you flick to a slide that I
Yeah.
maybe helps explain that as well. And scientists have called this the flow channel, and it's that kind of midpoint between being bored and also overwhelmed. And it's in this channel, kind of along the middle, which is really the area that you aim to be in. And it's where it keeps our attention really focused and present. So it's a balance between something that we're naturally good at and we have a natural talent for, but it also balances it with that need for a bit of challenge as well.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So is it okay to close the slide?
Sure, absolutely. Yes, if you just close that. I mean, it does vary from people to people as well. So I think that's important to note as well, that whenever we're talking about flow and we're talking about people's optimal performance or flow channel, however you want to talk about it, it's very personal to you.
Absolutely. So yes, while it is personal, how does the flow channel, differ between people to people?
Well, for those people, and I'm sure we've all come across them in whether it's through school or academic or sport or work, there's some people who absolutely thrive on that challenge, the ones that really, really push for the bigger targets. They want to run faster. They're the people who really push themselves. And for people like that, I guess the challenge for them is not speeding past that flow channel, because they're so focused on making things bigger and better that sometimes they can push themselves too hard, and they can push themselves into that situation where ultimately they end up burning out. On the other side, you've got people who more naturally thrive in the comfort zone. They like that familiarity. And for them, it can be quite a challenge to make sure you don't slip into boredom. Do you know what I mean? It's that sort of finding that area that sometimes they need to challenge themselves a little bit more, and also to recognize that when they're starting to feel that slight discomfort, that can indicate that they're on the right path to getting into flow and being more satisfied and more productive. So in lots of aspects of life, and this is no different, we just need to be aware of kind of what's going on. Take notice of when you're feeling either overwhelmed or a little bit stressed, or when you're feeling just a little bit bored as well. Recognize what's going on, because it could well be that you're moving away from flow in those situations, but it will be unique to you.
Yeah. So from a business perspective, why does that matter?
And that's really interesting, because some of these topics before perhaps have thought it's been looked at as maybe kind of the softer side of business, but actually when we look at it now, there's growing evidence that flow really does matter, and it matters for business. And there was a 10-year study by McKinsey that looked at productivity and looked at top execs and when they were performing, and they actually found that when they were in flow, they were 5 times more productive, which is quite phenomenal.
Wow. Yeah.
And they looked at okay, so that's a fantastic improvement. What if you just tweaked it a little bit? What if we just increased our flow by 15% or 20%? And if that was the case, they saw that overall productivity almost doubled.
Wow.
So if you think about it from your own perspective, we've got so many demands on our time, and how often do you hear people saying, oh gosh, I really wish I'd got more time, or I'm too busy to do that. And I guess my question is, and my challenge to people is to say, well, actually think about flow. How much more productive and satisfied could you be if you just increase the amount of time you spent in flow?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And let me stop the share here.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
um,
Sorry, I keep forgetting to tell you.
yeah, so now it feels as if it's something intangible and something more hidden. Um,
Mhm.
is there a kind of a science or logic behind this, or is something that you just feel?
Well, I'm a scientist. My background is in pharmacology and chemistry, so I love to see a bit of science behind things. And actually, there is a lot of work that's going on now looking at what's going on in our brains actually when we're in flow. And if you, lovely, thank you. So if you actually look at what's happening when we're in flow, five major neurotransmitters are actually in action. And these neurotransmitters all enhance productivity, creativity, and satisfaction. So just really, really briefly, if you're looking at when somebody is actually in flow, their dopamine and their norepinephrine, I'll get to say that word properly one day, really enhances the formation and retrieval of memory. So they're very, very important when it comes to focus and memory. Then if you think about endorphins, which we know block pain, they can also help to reduce stress. So again, they've got an important role when we're looking at pushing people to challenge themselves, but clearly we don't want them to go too far into burnout. We've got serotonin as well, which is great for looking at a calm and contented mind. And increasing amount of research is looking at other neurotransmitters, which also are thought to promote lateral connectivity and boost creativity. So when we're in flow, there's an awful lot of neurotransmitters going on in the brain. When they all combine together, we're able to absorb information, we're able to synthesize information, integrate it, so therefore we're boosting learning, boosting motivation, creativity, and productivity. So I think it's a really interesting area of science, and I think as time goes on, we're going to get even more information about how important this is in terms of our productivity and satisfaction.
Yeah, well, that's quite scientific for me. Um, a lot of these words I have to learn to pronounce as well, I guess. But
Yeah.
it's good to know that it's not just you feel that this is natural to me, but there is some scientific evidence how it's going to help as well, and which parts and which enzymes. Wow, that's wonderful. So I think I'm more interested to know now is, how can we create more of this, flow in our lives? Because it seems, it's pretty scientific. Um, and it's exciting to get more of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And from a science perspective, yes, that's all very nice and interesting, but it's more interesting for us to know actually how can we create this in our everyday life. And if we think about flow, there's a number of preconditions that actually occur to lead to more flow. And these can be grouped kind of broadly into two categories. So if we're talking about environmental triggers and also psychological triggers. So if we just think about, and if you are embarking on a project, what is it that's going to create more flow for you? And one of those aspects is the consequences. When we've got high consequences and it's very important, then that encourages us to focus and catches our attention. Unpredictability is an interesting one as well, because again, if we're not knowing what's coming next, that can help create flow as well. So whilst high consequence and unpredictability might not necessarily be something that we seek out, but if it's there, that can help us to really boost our flow too.
Wow.
We think as well about kind of our everyday tasks as well. I mean, multitasking. I know I'm guilty of it. How about you?
Yeah. Well, I guess, a lot of these triggers, I feel, I think we got to experience to understand more
Mm.
exactly where. And I think uh, we should be able to spend more time with you, probably one-to-one, to get
Mm.
a better understanding of what is it for me and what works for me. Um, uh, but I'm just thinking, well, while we're talking about getting more of this flow, I'm
Mhm.
thinking, what is it that will get me out of flow? Because I think
Sure.
that's something that I need to prevent as well, I guess.
Absolutely. So what takes us out of flow? Well, things like multitasking. So if we're not actually focusing on one thing, that's something that can take us out of flow. Passion and purpose as well. If we're really connected to what we're doing, then again, we feel like we're in flow. But when we're not, and we just feel like we're going through the mundane, we're doing things because we've been told we need to do, that can take us out of flow. Another
Yeah,
important one is measurement. If we know what we're, our activities are actually making a difference. Again, that can make a big impact in terms of whether we're in flow or whether we're out of flow.
I can relate to this to businesses, and the first point that you mentioned here is no passion, no purpose.
Mhm,
Um, I could relate this to the vision of the organization and mission of the organization.
mhm,
If you have employees which do not know where we're going, do not know what's the vision of the organization, then they might be doing things because they are told to do, as you said, right? But they may not
mhm.
enjoy the journey. So they are
Yeah.
waiting for their goals to be achieved to be
Mhm,
happy,
mhm,
um, or satisfied. But then, success is no goal to be achieved. Success is a
mhm,
journey.
mhm,
So I would only know what's the purpose of my organization. Why do we do what we do? And if
mhm.
I know the purpose, then I'm enjoying the journey. So I'm not waiting for the goal to be achieved, which means I'm happy every day. So
Exactly.
that's why we say, the vision is not what leaders think, the organization should do,
Mm,
right? I think vision and mission is something that every employee believes we can do.
exactly.
And I
It's
think that's
it's
where everybody gets into the flow.
Exactly. I mean, it's so important. It's no good having a lovely vision and a mission that you perhaps put on a PowerPoint, or you put it on your wall, if you don't integrate it into the whole organization.
Yeah.
And if the people who are actually, coming to the organization every day, if they're not connected to that, then you get this situation where they're taken out of flow because they're just not connected to where you're going. So it's not acceptable really to have these visions unless we're really embedding them into the organization, because then they just become a meaningless statement rather than something that people can actually get behind and really benefit from personally as well as the organization. um, there's just a couple of other things that take us out of flow that I think is just worth mentioning here. And a lot of it is around how do we set up our workstation, or how we do we turn off our email notifications, do we have our social media pinging. All of these things can take us out of flow. And I
Yeah.
think with more people now working from home, again, it's about setting boundaries at home. So how many people have been on Zoom calls and the family are wanting attention, or the dog's barking, or the guys delivering from Amazon. It's these sort of things which again can take us out of flow. And setting those boundaries and when we are working at home as well is really, really important to help us just to be in flow, because when we're in flow, we're more productive, we get the task done, and then we can spend quality time with family and friends.
Okay. So I think the audience now understands, how to be in flow, what takes us out of flow. Um, and, I guess, you consulting this to a lot of your clients.
Mhm.
So how do you help your clients experience more of this flow?
Mhm. Well, if you just follow the next slide, I think that'll help with the explanation too. And one of the tools that I use to help clients get into flow is called the Genius Test and also Wealth Dynamics. Now, we've already talked about already a bit about our own natural talents, but it's important to think about how much time we actually spend on those working in your zone of genius, where you are naturally talented. Because if I think back to my school life or even work life as well, so often we're told what we're not so good at, and we spend time focusing on areas that we're developing those skills. And whilst that's important, I'm never going to be an artist. I can't.
Right.
And no matter how much encouragement, that's not going to change. And if you're pushed to do to keep trying to improve in some of these areas, you can just feel very disheartened. Like I say, I will never be an artist, and I recognise that now, which is fine. But if we think about how much more productive and how much more effective we can be if we focus on developing our natural talents and getting into flow that way, then we can really start to make a difference. And that's what I use the Genius Test and also Wealth Dynamics, which really helps identify where those natural skills lie, and we put a plan together to make sure we're focusing on those maximum effect. So it's about getting back into that flow channel, and this is one of the tools that I use to help my clients get back into that flow channel.
So I understand, and I think because I have been through one of these tests as well, thanks to you, and I understand now that there are different energies, and everything is energy. So with these tools, I would try to analyze myself, and a report will tell me, whether I have more of blaze energy or tempo energy or dynamo energy or steel energy. What's the balance if I don't have something, out of this four, or I have less of that? And I just understand that what is the combination of energies is me. And as you said, then obviously based on that, you help clients to focus on the areas of their strength, areas of their weaknesses, if they have to work on them, but not necessarily in a traditional management way of trying to improve your weaknesses. But in fact, understanding that is not really a weakness, it's just my composition, that I have less of that energy. So there's nothing to improve, there's nothing to repair. It's just to understand what is me. And I think we could be, we ourselves could be a very powerful tool only if we understand what we are. Exactly. And the life goes in finding out what I am. The famous author said, the most difficult task is to know, who I am. So that takes me to, my next question. You mentioned the purpose, obviously, for your customers. So what does that mean, from a business perspective?
Well, if you just go on to the next slide, we've already touched on kind of passion and purpose in business, and there was a Gallup study that found that 85% of the working population is not engaged and not passionate about what they do, and that's over 2.5 billion people who aren't fulfilled and happy at work. And if you're not happy and fulfilled at work, it's very difficult to be at our best. So really helping people to connect to what is important to them. And also we talked briefly as well about connecting to the purpose of the business. And there's a lovely quote by Simon Sinek, if we just go on to the next slide, that I wanted to share as well. And the topic of purpose is something that Simon Sinek's made very popular, through TED Talks and his talk about, start with your why. And I think it's something that's really, really important, because it's not about, like you said, having a nice vision on the wall, but it's really about embedding that in the culture of the company. And really, purpose-driven companies have such a massive impact on employees, on their customers, and on financial performance. So it's not a nice to have anymore. It's something that we can really measure and say, actually, purpose-driven companies outperform the market. So if you can really connect into purpose, then it makes sense from so many different levels.
Wow, fantastic. And I know because I use one of your tools as well. And so let's try to explain this to our audience. What are these tools? And are they free? They have to pay for any of these tools?
Yeah, I mean, there's what I would say is there's huge amount of free resources out there, and one of the great resources that I use is called Genius U. It's a platform where you can access the passion test, the purpose test, the genius test. It's free to join, and these tests are free as well. And I would really encourage people to go onto the platform and look. There's a lot of different courses that you can take as well to help in these areas, and there's a lot of free resources there. So certainly these three would be my first starting point. So really understanding your passion, understanding your purpose, and understanding where your genius is can really help get you into flow.
Okay, so this is to the audience. There are these tests that are there. You can take it when you want. I'll be sharing the link, which you will see on your screen, for Louise's website, NB Coaching, and I'll point you to the right page. Again, click the link here, and it'll show you all different types of tests are that there, and it'll take you to the Genius U platform, where you will actually take the test. But I think the best place to find the information in a curated form, which is relevant to today's session, is on NB Coaching's website. Again, the link to the website and the particular page where you have these tests is there on your screen. So I urge, because I have used some of these tests myself, and I've gone through the report. It's a pretty exhaustive report, by the way, and it tells you what kind of personality you are. One thing to watch, though, and this is through my personal experience, and I would say, some of these questions you want to answer in two different ways, but actually it's not an assessment, it's a self-assessment, which means whatever comes to your mind, you need to click that. You don't have to think of putting up an image and accordingly trying to answer. Don't do that, because this is for your self-understanding, self-assessment, self-exploration. So you're not going to tell anyone, what you answered. Nobody's going to ask you, oh, so you said this, right? That means you are that. No, just ask yourself genuinely, what is my best answer? Sometimes you'll find in a question that, the two answers which are appropriate, but then read the question carefully. It says, give your best answer. And that's the time you get a few seconds to decide which is my best answer, right? And you have to choose one. So there's no, I am this as well as I'm that. That's what usually I feel. But during the test, be honest, and you will get an honest answer telling you, which energies in you are on the higher side, which are the areas that you should be able to understand and avoid doing it yourself. So maybe you find areas of delegation, you find areas where you want to do more work. And if you find that you have, for example, you have more of dynamo energy, and accordingly you do more of those tasks, you're obviously going to be enjoying. And as we saw in the initial screens, you won't be bored on one side. At the same time, you won't have anxiety. So you want to do that kind of work? Well, you need to go and find out what's your flow on those tests. And trust me, these tests are pretty well designed, and the report is exhaustive. But I would say, in the world of AI and machine learning and all that automation, right? And nothing replaces human intellect. And the ideal example in front of me is the guest here, Louise herself. When I spoke to her after my report, I actually realized what report is trying to say. And it makes sense in my context. So the report, don't get me wrong, report is great. And it explains it well in good English. But it's not the English. I'm trying to understand that point in the context of my life and what I'm doing. And that's what Louise does. And she is a fantastic consultant, very patient listener. And I must say, I highly advise you having one-to-one with her. And trust me, these tests are free anyway. There might be some, free sessions for some lucky winners of this conference. But then even if you have to pay, trust me, if you are going to be five times more successful, just evaluate the value of that session, right? So I highly encourage people to go through this, find their own flow, and enjoy your flow.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. You raised such important points. So thank you.
Well, you educated me with giving me the access to the tools and the consultancy as well. And I'm happy that, I am finding my flow, even after 25, 26 years of experience in the industry, I'm still finding, well, there are a few new things to see. So there's nothing like, well, I'm so experienced, I'm successful, I'm the director of London School of Digital Business. Well, everybody needs this at every stage of life. So that's all I would say. Louise, you want to say any closing comments?
No, I think you just raised it so perfectly there that we are all unique. You are you, and it's finding the best way to get the best for yourself. So it's not about trying to be somebody else. It's about being uniquely you.
Fantastic. So thank you so much, Louise, for your presence here, your valuable words. And I'm sure a lot of lives are going to change after this session. So thank you so much. And we'll talk again.
Will do. Thank you again.